So you're trying to get a job with one of these firms, which means you have to work for them during the summer after your second year of law school. And then if you do well enough, they offer you your permanent job while you're still in law school. So you know what your fate is, you know what your salary is and all that stuff. But as it turns out, while you're clerking, they pay you a really absurd salary. And so my clerkship lasted 5 weeks.
Right.
And I lived with my mom while I was clerking because, again, I'm trying to save money. I'm contributing to the household. When I showed my mother my first paycheck, she almost passed out. Right. I mean, like, and this is when I'm clerking during the summer. This isn't the salary I'll eventually get, right? And then at one point at the end of the summer when I showed her like my final check and I said, I think it went well. I think they're going to invite me back. The final check sort of showed everything that you made during that summer over that 6 weeks working with them. And my mom gets misty-eyed again. I was like, you've seen this check before. This shouldn't, you know. She says, no, it's just that the amount of money that you made in this 6 weeks working with this law firm is more than I've made in a full year.
Wow.
Since you've been in high school.
Oh, boy.
That's when you say what was the difference of me going to law school?
Yeah.
It was that, right? It allows you to, if you educate an impoverished child, you'd be surprised the impact you can have, not only on that child, but the blast radius on that impact covers the family. I sent my younger brother to college. After that, my sister had children. My nieces all graduated from college. I was able to make my mom's life better.
I am so excited about today's guest. Have gotten to know Randy Bowman over the last few months, and first time I met with Randy, I was in awe because we sat down and wisdom was being kicked for 2 hours. Like I was just sitting there and it was pouring into me. And Ben, today I know Tyler's going to show up in a minute, so I want those listening that know that you're going to hear Tyler's voice here shortly. But Randy Bowman. Randy Bowman is the CEO of At Last, the first boarding experience for Dallas ISD students, Dallas Independent School students, whose homes lack the stability needed to reach higher achievements. And this is not a boarding school per se. This is a home away from home, right? And I want to make sure I got this right. This is a home away from home. So Monday through Friday, At Last boards these kids, and then on weekends they go home.
Sunday through Thursday,
they go home. They're
with us Sunday through Thursday.
So they're with you Sunday through Thursday, and then they go home for a couple of days there on the weekends. So this is an experience, and on this show we always talk about our core values, and our core values on this show are always serving the community, like truly serving the community. And I'm not just saying I see it, I'm going to just send a check. No. Spending the time with your resources, whether that be your time, money, whatever, and truly serving the community. Those are our core values on this show. And Randy, you're the epitome of that. You speak directly to that. And I want to talk, because I can talk about At Last right now, but I have to talk about you and your experiences growing up. You being a Dallas Independent School kid and going to school in the district. Let's go back and talk about why Randy Bowman is doing what he's doing. But first, I want to go back and talk about your upbringing and your family dynamics as well.
Okay. So I'll start with just saying thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Every chance we get to amplify this story benefits the kids that we serve and the community that we serve, and ultimately benefits all of Dallas. And I'm a Dallas guy. Like I did my formative years here in Dallas. I'm a Pleasant Grove guy, to be more precise. And a Grove guy, to be more colloquial. Right. So I'm a Grove guy. Right. And I did attend DISD schools. I mean, Burleson, Comstock, Spruce, sort of elementary, middle school, high school progression. And that was sort of That was my way. That was my way. That was my life. And I still consider myself to be a Grove guy.
Right.
Like I still spend time with my folks from the Grove, and it's good for my soul. It's good for my soul. Not all of my service can be to areas that aren't proximal to my experience. Most of my service needs to be to areas that are proximal to my experience, because those areas have such great need. And I am one of those prototypical kids, one of those stereotypical kids that people envision that may have grown up in an impoverished area. My mother, who is like an amazing woman. I've never met a better mother than my mom. All of your moms can be tied with my mom for first, but she's there. She's that woman. She's one of those women, though, that society looked down on. And it made life hard for her and her children. So there were the four of us. She started having kids when she was a teenager. I was the second of those children that she had. And, she was not married when she began having children. She wasn't married when she had me. And, society has thoughts about that, many of which are often ill-informed. Let me say it in that way.
Yep.
And so she did her absolute best, but she was very intelligent but undereducated. And it's a notion of having native intellect but not having that native intellect refined.
Right.
And so she's an intelligent woman, but she was undereducated. And so she has these children, and she's trying to raise them in Pleasant Grove. She did it largely on her own. And I was the oldest boy. And so the oldest boy has a laboring oar to carry, in these types of families. And so she needed me to be more responsible. And that was fine by me. So I had my first hustle when I was 10.
Was it a legal hustle?
It was legal, and as I understood the law as a 10-year-old.
As a 10-year-old, who eventually became an attorney. So, but at 10 years old,
as a 10-year-old.
Was it voiceover work? Because your voice, my goodness, man, it is phenomenal.
It was not. Thank you. It was not. And at 10, I can assure you, it was not. Right? So no, it was not voiceover work. We were refreshing automobiles at a car wash is what we would do. They would wash their car, and I'd be up there with a squirt bottle, and I'd say, "Can I refresh your automobile?" Because smoking was big then, and the cars just smelled like the bottom of an ashtray. And so I'd go in and I'd squirt some smell good into their car, and they'd give me $1, and I'd go park my little butt back over there by the vacuum cleaner until somebody else came around. And so those were long days, but they wound up making money. So my mom needed me to go to work early. So I had my first hustle when I was 10. I had my first job when I was 12. And and I've not been without a job, honestly, since then. And it was the kind of thing where you're not working for pocket change. You're spending money of your own. You're working to help make the household work.
Right.
But I'm not the protagonist of that story. My mom is. Because even as she needed her eldest son to go out and work, she made sure that she did all that she could to be the best mom that she could for our family. And it was a difficult slog trying to get up that hill. It wasn't always pretty. And my mother wasn't always perfect in her execution. She wasn't always perfect in her planning. And the only thing that I can tell you is that she was perfect in her love for us. And she was perfect in how she poured belief into me of my ability to accomplish special things.
Right.
She didn't know how to tell me how I would do it. Like, none of those things were really within her basket of skills. But she was amazing at getting me to believe in the possibilities that were out there. And she was resilient, and she taught us the strength of resilience. And so that was sort of our upbringing. It was a challenging life, but she managed to make it one that still had elements of joy in it. Right. And where you would learn to enjoy sacrifice, for the family.
How were you academically at a young age, and your brothers and sisters?
So it's interesting. That's a really good question. So academically, I was pretty good. I was pretty good.
Naturally?
I think that I've got a pretty good instrument.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like my native intellect, I think, was pretty good. But it was highly unrefined.
Right.
People talk about how many words you hear spoken by the time you're 5, how many books you read, and that type of thing. And ours was not a household where there was a lot of education. We were not in a family where there was a lot of education. Right. So pretty good instrument, but native intellect largely unrefined. So I made good grades in school, sometimes because I was in a neighborhood full of people that were equally challenged.
Right.
And so I didn't make a B until I was in the 8th grade, but I didn't do anything special to make that happen. And then in the 8th grade, I'm working, like I'm going to school, then I'm going to practice, and then I'm going to work, and then I'm getting up in the next morning, I'm doing the same thing over again, so I just stopped doing homework. And because something had to give.
Right.
Yeah.
And so my grades were still good, but they were no longer stellar. And so I go and I graduate from high school, and I'm in the top 10% of my class, so I can go to the University of Texas, which meant that I could go to a school that was a state school.
Right.
And so it became incredibly affordable. And so the notion of an impoverished kid being able to get into school solely off the strength of being in the top 10%, being able to get into a state school, was a key to opening the door for me. Because in college, I would still have to work to send money home. Because remember, I have 2 younger brothers.
Right.
And I have a mom whose health is becoming challenged at that point, and her ability to work becomes compromised. And so I was able to go to college because the University of Texas was very affordable.
Which is amazing to hear because things have changed dramatically. Yeah.
It's still a lot more affordable than other places the state schools are.
If you're,
So relatively speaking,
from Texas,
if you're an in-state person, right?
Yep.
The private schools are ridiculously expensive. So I was able to go there. I was able to work. I was able to send money home and still sort of pay my way through school. And so I feel like I was incredibly fortunate, incredibly blessed to find a narrow pathway that would allow a kid with my demographic, with my background to get there.
So you had to work extremely hard, and you mentioned earlier is you joyfully but sacrificially worked and served, and to serve your younger siblings, your older sibling, your mom. But those are long days, as you mentioned, working at the car wash. They're long days, going to school, going to work, doing all the things that you did. What was the motivation to keep pressing forward for you? What was that mindset to say, hey, listen, it's hard, but it's all worth it? Was it a sense of, hey, my mom instilled belief in me and I know that I can accomplish these things? Was it, I need to do better than where I grew up? What was the motivation that kept you going through those hard times?
Yeah, I found motivation easy to come by. You'd be shocked at how strong a motivator necessity is. And poverty does a really good job of introducing you to the necessity of finding your motivation. So that was one thing. And I do not say that to say that poverty in someone's life is a good thing. Like there are other ways to find your motivation. And honestly, I would like to have found my motivation otherwise. The other strong motivator for me, though, was I just needed to make my mom's days better.
Right.
And if the only thing that I needed to do to make my mom's life better was that I needed to work a little more, that I can do. That sister's life was hard. Her life was hard. I mean, you think about it, no little girl sits back and says, one day I'm going to grow up, I'm going to be a mom, and I'm going to have made choices and sometimes land in circumstances that prevent me from being a wonderful mom for my children.
Right.
I'm going to one day not be able to meet all of their basic needs, and I'm not going to be able to provide them with the educational opportunities they need for a good adult life. No young girl dreams that when she's contemplating becoming a mother.
That's right.
So when that happens in their lives, it's debilitating to their soul. And my mom's inability to be the mom she always envisioned being, even though she was great, She wasn't what she always envisioned being. It was corrosive to her soul. And she wasn't doing for her children what she wanted. And because she didn't have health insurance, as that frustration in her life caused her to spiral into depression, she wound up self-medicating and still with alcohol, and still was an amazing mom. If you can watch someone who's sacrificing everything for you and pouring everything she has into you and not be willing to go out and work to help make things work in that family,
right,
there's probably some introspection that you need to engage in.
Right.
Yeah.
So the motivation was easy to find.
So you talk about dreams. What about you? Did you have dreams, or were you too busy just surviving and keeping things afloat? Or did you have goals? Did you have dreams? Was there things that you were after? Did you have time for that?
Yeah. I mean, I had dreams, but I've never been a guy without dreams. I think all people have dreams, right? And then it's a question of whether or not you have access ways that allow you to get to them, and then whether or not you choose those access ways and prosecute that in a way that makes sense. So I had dreams, and my dreams initially were derivative of my mom's hopes for my life. My mom wanted me to be a doctor. So my dream became I'm going to be a doctor. And then I realized that that's really not where my gifts were. It also wasn't where my intellectual curiosity was.
Right.
And so it's like you show up at, your parent tells you, I want you to be a running back. And then you realize I'm actually a DB.
Right.
Like I don't have the inclination, the skills.
Folks.
Like I want to crash into someone, take the ball away. And so what I had to do is to uncouple my dreams and ambitions from my mom's desires for me. She wanted a doctor. What she really wanted was for my life to be a happy life and for me to be able to do the things that were interesting to me. So I needed to formulate my own goals and dreams. And so I did. I shared them with her and said, this is what I'm trying to do with my life. And some of that stuff registered with her, and some of it did not.
Right.
So ultimately she said, baby, I just want you to be happy. Go and do your thing.
Right.
And so that's what I did. I wanted to get 2 years of college under my belt, because then I could apply for a job in the post office or with the fire department. The best jobs on the penumbra, on the edge of our neighborhood, were folks who worked in the post office. And if you could get a postal job,
You came up.
you were coming up in a big way.
Up.
You had arrived.
Yeah.
and
We made it.
That's great stuff.
Isn't that crazy how the perspective and the thoughts that you had as a kid, just from being in that experience and living in that world, similar to you? And my deal was, I want to be a cop. I want to be a police officer. I want to be a fireman, because that's all I saw.
Yeah.
That was success.
Yeah. It's like that's the highest ranking executive I've met.
Or I could be a drug dealer, a CEO drug dealer off the corner, but I knew the life expectancy of that guy was a lot shorter. So
It's a short career and a short life.
Yeah.
And you live it in fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
And so that was my goal. I wanted to get 30 hours of college. And then my thought was my pathway to my dreams needed to be rational. Like I speak often about rational hope, because I didn't really receive well this notion of you can be whatever you want to be. Like I'd like to not be poor. I still am. Apparently I can't just be whatever I want to be. And so I needed to have a rational pathway. And for me, a rational pathway to a life that was not impoverished was if I can get 30 hours of college, apply to the post office or the fire department, and get a job at either of those places, I will no longer be poor. That was my dream. And then my thought was, when I get to 30 hours of college, then the goal becomes, I want to finish college and pursue a career. But rational for me was being able to take one step at a time to a step that I can imagine being able to accomplish and achieve, not sort of shooting over the moon to a destination that I had no pathway to get to.
So let's go back here, because your experience in life was you lived in the Grove, and if those that are listening, the Grove to this day is one of the roughest areas in Dallas. There's a lot to that community. You go to college. What was your first? Again, the experiences you had in the Grove and the people that you're surrounded by are going to be totally different than those at the University of Texas. What was that experience like when you first got to Austin?
Yeah, it turns out you're exactly right. H. Grady Spruce and the University of Texas bore little resemblance.
Right.
And the things that were the most different were really because of deficits within me, like deficiencies in my human capital, and how it is that I understood life, how it is that I approached life, how it is that I processed things. So it was largely within me. But at that time, it seemed as if it was really about these other folks really not getting it.
Yeah.
And so the biggest shocks to me were that people didn't wonder about how things were going to work out. You know, they had a plan, they had resources. I would hear people in college say, I'm poor. And what they really meant was that mom hadn't sent the check that week yet. You know, or mom did send the check for that month. They spent all the money. And now they've got 2 more weeks before the money arrives again. And I'm thinking, man, I am going to work when I get out of class here. And then I'm going to send the money back to Pleasant Grove. The flows of resources were opposite for us. Things were flowing into them. Things were flowing away from me and back home. And again, I'm not complaining about that. That was perfectly fine. The other thing that really shocked me was how woefully unprepared I was for college, despite doing well in high school. I felt like I had almost maximized the curriculum at my inner city high school. And my teachers were great, by the way, so I'm not here to complain about them. I felt like I'd almost maximized the possibilities within that curriculum. But when I got to the University of Texas, everything that I knew, they covered within the first 6 weeks in all of my core classes. And I was like, man, I was counting on this knowledge to sort of get me through.
Taking through my 30 hours.
Like I'm trying to get to 30 hours here, but I'm at 6 weeks. This is not going well. So that piece shocked a brother. I'm not going to lie to you. The other thing that was really surprising to me was just the social milieu in which we were operating. The conflict resolution approach in college was entirely different from the conflict resolution approach in the Grove. Like I've never started a fight in my life, but I've been in lots.
Just walked into them.
Just sort of
fell into.
Just here to get milk, guys.
Like I'm here for milk, but if this is part of it, we are where we are, right? And it wound up though. I mean, and again, I'm not advocating the approach, but it was so much more efficient. And you know, if we're not seeing the world the same way, we can come to reconciliation. We may not be in peace afterwards, but we will be at reconciliation. And in college, that was not the approach to conflict resolution. And so in so many ways, it was really, really good for me to be in college and to just see the world a different way. And it was really in college, and as much outside the classroom as within, that I was able to sort of refine my intellect and to play this instrument better. And it was in college that I was able to develop confidence that I wasn't just Grove smart. You know, it's like being a good athlete on a bad team. It's like I wasn't just Grove smart. It's like I can play with any of you. And, you know, it's not because you're scrubs. It's because, you know, I'm not bad at this.
I want to go back, as we move on through the show, I want to go back to your experiences, because those same experiences we see where kids are, you know, they're in a certain circumstances and they elevate and they get into college, and because they've had this experience where their education hasn't been that strong, now they're playing from behind, and it's like you got to catch up. And I want to go back through that, especially when we start talking about that last.
I agree with you. I think that's important to recognize, because, you know, really people from bubbles elsewhere, right? It's like, well, it's the same curriculum. Like, I mean, you're in the same state, you're in the same, like, so, you know, why is the Grove different than East Dallas, or why is the Grove different than North Dallas?
Or
like,
Plano,
y'all have the same. It's not. So I agree with you. I want to dig into that, but
Okay, so we go into college. So you are okay. Let's go to your junior, senior years in college. What's your thought process now? Is things are changing? You're understanding the landscape, and now your own personal goals are changing. So where are you headed now?
So heading into my junior year of college, there were two thoughts that were sort of predominant. Number one was that my middle brother was already in the state penitentiary, so I wasn't able to catch him, and it was my job to do that. So like my old man wasn't around,
right?
So it was me and my mother raising our family, and so I wasn't able to do that. My youngest brother was going to be graduating high school in 1989. So entering my junior year of college, the goal was, number one, I've decided by that time that I wanted to become a lawyer. I wanted to go to law school.
Wow. Wow.
And I didn't want to be a criminal defense lawyer. I didn't want to be a personal injury lawyer. I didn't want to be a family lawyer. Not because there's anything wrong with those disciplines, but because honestly, I was tired of watching black people be impoverished.
Right.
And the purpose of the civil rights movements in many ways was to give us access to the broader game. Yeah. And in order to really play in the broader game, you sort of have to know how to create commerce. So my thought was, what if I went to law school and focused on how it is that capital gets accumulated, deals get done, and wealth gets created?
Wow.
That seems to be an area where we don't have a lot of us. And in so many ways, that seemed to me as if we weren't making a great utilization of the sacrifices from the civil rights movement. So maybe I'll go and do that. I was sold. So I said, all right, I'll do that. The challenge was, so my second thought, so that was the first thought. I want to go to law school and I want to be able to do deals. My second thought was, I can't miss my youngest brother. So I have to finish law school by the time he finishes high school so that I can send him to college. Those were my two big thoughts going into my junior year. And so I'm really happy to say that both of those worked out for me. Law school went really, really well for me. And I got a job at a great firm back here in Dallas.
Right.
And I graduated law school in '89. He graduated high school in '89. And so my brother is a proud graduate of Texas Southern University. And
congrats, man.
so that's what I was thinking in my junior year of college.
I want to marinate on that, graduating from law school. I mean, what was that experience like for your family? I know you said your mother's health was starting to decline. Was she able to be there for your law school graduation?
Oh yeah.
What was that? What was that like?
So law school was ridiculous. It was getting accepted into law school was almost like I'd been accepted into a different universe.
Yeah.
Like an entirely different life. Like we don't have college graduates in our family, let alone lawyers, right? So it's just a different world. For my mom, it was incredible because again, when I say that her health was failing, the primary thing at that point was that she was battling alcoholism and doing it well. I thought, like, she's putting up a good fight. I'm proud of that sister. So that's so law school is this. Law school is typically 3 years, and pretty early on, you're going to know whether you're destined for a really good job at a big firm, or if you're not. And if you're not, you can still make a great living, make a great life. But if you are, you're going to be making pretty good money from the moment you graduate.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you get those jobs by going out and doing.
Postman money? Close?
I'm going to go right ahead and tell you that I outstripped my goal in terms of what I was going to get from the post office. I'll admit to that.
Oh, man.
And I like that. And so you're trying to get a job with one of these firms, which means you have to work for them during the summer after your second year of law school. And then if you do well enough, they offer you your permanent job while you're still in law school. So you know what your fate is, you know what your salary is, and all that stuff. But as it turns out, while you're clerking, they pay you a really absurd salary. And so my clerkship lasted 5 weeks. And I lived with my mom while I was clerking because, again, I'm trying to save money. I'm contributing to the household. when I showed my mother my first paycheck, she almost passed out. Right. I mean, like, and this is when I'm clerking during the summer. This isn't the salary I'll eventually get, right? And then at one point at the end of the summer, when I showed her like my final check, and I said, I think it went well. I think they're going to invite me back. The final check sort of showed everything that you made during that summer over that 6 weeks working with them. And my mom gets misty-eyed again. I was like, you've seen this check before. This shouldn't, you know. She says, no, it's just that the amount of money that you made in this 6 weeks working with this law firm is more than I've made in a full year.
Wow.
Since you've been in high school.
Oh, boy.
That's when you say what was the difference of me going to law school?
Yeah.
It was that, right? It allows you to, if you educate an impoverished child, you'd be surprised the impact you can have, not only on that child, but the blast radius on that impact covers the family. I sent my younger brother to college. After that, my sister had children. My nieces all graduated from college. I was able to make my mom's life better.
Hey guys, I want to take a quick break from this conversation and remind you or let you know that it's the $1.5 million Moonlight Millions giveaway every single Saturday from October 23rd, that's this Saturday, to November 27th at Choctaw Casino and Resort in Durant. Play with your rewards card to earn entries for drawings and a share of the $1.5 million. Don't miss the Moonlight Millions giveaway this fall at Choctaw Casino and Resort Durant, where we're raising the stakes all the way to the moon. So if you hate free money, go ahead and skip forward back to the rest of this episode. If you love free money, go check out Choctaw Casino and Resort. As I said, use your rewards card and win you some free cash. That's never a bad thing. All right, guys. Appreciate you. Love you. Now back to the episode.
That was the impact on going to college. And she was able to come to the graduation. It was like the highlight of her life. This is at a great time. It was great, man. So I am grateful for that experience.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Man, that's so strong.
Walk us through those first couple years at a large firm in a big city. It's a grind. But you were especially prepared for the grind, I'd imagine, based off of what you had done starting at 10 years old. What were those first years like?
So it's another great question. I mean, you guys are pretty good at this.
Man,
y'all not
you're on
bad
the spot, bro. That's all it is.
It's a good conversation. One of the things that growing up impoverished can do is to prepare you for great comfort in a really difficult life. And so I haven't really felt as if I'd faced a hard time since I left the Grove.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you don't own a hard time that I don't feel I can manage emotionally.
Right.
Like, even if I fail at the thing, emotionally,
Right.
I'm good. You know,
I know where you're going. I know.
You know what I mean? I've seen my mother
Yeah.
struggle, man.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't have a greater disappointment for me than the things that I've seen. And so I wasn't stressed about those first few years in that law firm. I wasn't stressed about that grind. Honestly, I wasn't even stressed about keeping that job because law school had gone sufficiently well for me that if I didn't have that job, I'd have another one. So it wasn't, I wasn't stressed about that. So when you get to that point, in some ways it becomes liberating because then the only stress that you have are the pressure, is the pressure of your own goals.
Right.
Yeah.
And sort of, what do I want to do? What is my responsibility to not simply make a good living, but to sort of live a good life? By this time, I'd figured out that that I'm not replicated often from the Grove. And not because we don't have great people there, but because at some point the hill is so steep that no matter how hard Sisyphus pushes that stone up the hill,
Right.
it's coming back down.
Yeah.
95% of the time.
Yeah.
And so if the grove isn't going to be able, if poverty isn't going to be able to replicate me often, I need to get a pretty good yield out of this. You know, so I felt like my obligations were bigger than those that I had to myself and bigger than all of that. So I didn't feel a lot of pressure during those first few years.
Were you able to decipher the difference between the external pressure of working in a law firm versus the internal pressure that you put on yourself?
Yeah.
So you recognized at that point, like, okay, hey, look, I know this is all self-imposed. Because I feel like people get those confused, right? Like, as you're saying this, I'm like, I feel stressed all the time. But like, and I'm thinking about it, like, I don't get any of that because of work, like the physically coming from someone else. It's all internally imposed.
Right.
But to be able to, and I've never made that that correlation, which is interesting. But you at that time, you're like, this is on me.
I still feel stress, right? It's a question of how you process it. I can't go back to the poverty I've known.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like I'm on the high wire.
Yeah.
But if I fall off at one point in life, I'm splattering on the hard concrete 100 feet below. If I fall off now, I'm going to get caught by a safety net in about 15 feet. I'm going to be okay. Like I process that stress differently. I can't go back to what I knew. And my mother and I sat around the kitchen table when I was a preteen, working out the family's bills and understanding what was going to be turned off that month, when it was going to happen and what wasn't. So that it's not great for a kid, by the way.
Right.
Like I had a bleeding ulcer at 14. So it's not great for a kid. I am not recommending this path.
Right.
I'm saying, though, that with all of the horrible things that come out of it, there are some things that come out of it that give you a greater armor for what comes later in life. And the other thing that came out of it, though, in terms of, yes, I could deal with the stress of it and the grind of it. But the other thing is I wound up becoming fairly reliant upon me and my own efforts.
Right.
And not entrusting others to lift me out of my circumstance, because I didn't see the cavalry gathering up on the hill while we were impoverished growing up.
Yeah, that's right.
There's nothing on that hill, brother. It's just you.
Exactly.
And your mom.
Yep.
And your effort.
You know, and I want to go down this road. Who does it sound like?
I was going to say, I didn't have that perspective until I met Darren.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying just rings so true to me as you're saying that.
Because it does fall on you.
Yes.
In the end.
Yes.
In the end, if you want to make whatever your goal is, you can't look outside. It comes right back to you. If you want to make a change within the community, or you want to make a change in any aspect, it starts with you. And you had to learn that at a young, very, very young age.
As did you.
Yes. Yeah. So I totally understand that. I want to go back and start talking. Okay, you're recognizing this. You know where you are in your life and that you've reached your goal of what you wanted to accomplish. But when did it start to happen to you to say, okay, now it's time for me to truly get back into the community and start to serve and uplift this community? Because, man, I am so proud of you, man. Randy, I'm serious, man. I sit here and watch you, and we've had these conversations, but you're doing something that I've always wanted to do, just never got back there to do it. And I'm watching you with At-Last and being the CEO of At-Last really move the community in a positive way. So let's start going down that road and how you got there.
Okay. So it's in terms of the decision to say, this is the time that I need to focus on that. So here's sort of how I got there. I was approaching 50, which is now well in the rearview mirror for me. But I was approaching 50, right? And I was thinking, I spent my first 25 years in life just trying to get out of poverty. Like that was a goal. Let's just get through this. Let's get out of poverty. I wanted my next 25 years of life to be about having the family that I was looking for, finding a good soulmate, and then being comfortable in life. And who knows, swing for the fences a little bit, see how it plays out. That was my next 25 years in life. And so I was approaching 50, and I was like, well, okay, you've gotten through those two phases. And always playing in the background for me was this notion of you are where you are because you have a grace yielding Heavenly Father and an amazing earthly mother. So you need to give honor to that. And so I'm approaching 50, and I've got all this sort of running around in my head. And it's like, at this point, there's a lot of traffic, right? It's like I need to sort this out. And so I thought, all right, so I'm 50. I am hopeful that I'll have 25 more years of good cognitive. And the best way for me to spend the next 25 years of this good cognitive will be honoring the sacrifice that my mom made and during the first 25 years for me to be able to get to what I was looking for in life.
Right.
Being able to live a good adult life, find a wife and a soulmate and have kids and all that stuff. And so once I decided that that's what I wanted to do with the next 25 years, then the goal became, okay, by this time I've ceased the practice of law. I practiced law for 12 years. I started a logistics company from scratch with my business partner in 2001 and ran it for 17 years and went well. We were very blessed. We were fortunate. I sold my interest. And so then it becomes, you've sold your interest. Now you've sort of cleared the runway to do that thing that you want to do. What is it going to be? And the best way I could figure to honor my mom's sacrifice was to take today's moms who are in the position that she was back then, when they're great moms, they're loving moms, they want the best for their children, but they are, for whatever reason, unable to give their kids all the things they wanted to give them to enable the kids to live a good adult life.
Right.
So I need to find or create the program that will enable those moms to do that for their children. Is the best way to honor my mom having done that for me.
Right.
And so I decided to target on something that was not available for my mom that I could make available for these mothers now. And that became At Last.
That's man, so let's go into At Last.
Okay.
Like I'm telling you, because I'm listening to the story, and I know you guys know I've had conversations with Randy in the past, but I want him to share. I want you to share what At Last means within the community, because we're talking about the Dallas Independent School District, which you came up from, giving back into that fold. This is not. Let's talk directly to what At Last means and what it is.
Sure. And so At Last, again, exists to serve those impoverished moms, right?
Right.
We are agnostic on the school. If you're in an impoverished family, I will serve you. If you're in the DISD, a charter school or a private. Now, obviously, my heart rests with the DISD,
right?
And that's who I want to benefit. And so what it seeks to do is this. At Last exists to help kids perform better during the 7 hours a day that they are in school by giving them better educational resources during the 17 hours a day that they are not in school. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. And how I wound up sort of taking that approach was, I like complex business and social problems. Like I like spending my time on that. And so I was trying to figure out, how would you improve urban education for impoverished children if you dismissed all the conventional wisdom and all the best practices and just boiled the problem down to its most intractable part? What's the piece of this that's keeping it from working? And the research that I saw said that the kids who perform best in school are the ones who come out of households that have middle class and above resources.
Right.
That's true when you control for race. That's true when you control for gender. That's true when you control for the quality of the school. So if it's true, even when you control for the quality of the school, that suggests to me that the 29% of the day that you spend in school certainly matters. But the 71% of the day that you spend at home has more predictive value than the 29% of the day that you spend at school. And it makes sense if you think about it. The tax base tries, not always well, not always successfully, but it tries to level out the amount of educational resources that every kid gets in school every day. That's what our property taxes are about. So the tax base tries to even out the educational resources when you're at school. Nothing evens out the educational resources during the 71% of the day when you're at home.
Right.
And so as a business guy, if I had a struggle in a segment of my logistics company, let's say in profitability, I wouldn't try and fix that by working on the part of the business that only impacted 29% of the problem.
Absolutely. Yes.
I'd focus on the part that affected
That's right.
71%.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll do that. And so when the research pointed toward the home life resources being the most important piece of the problem, I stopped thinking about education theory and perhaps doing something like starting a school.
Right.
And I started thinking about how do I get resources, better educational resources to impoverished kids? How would an impoverished kid perform if you gave them the benefit of coming out of a house that had middle class or above educational resources to it? How would that kid's life have been different as a learner if they had the good fortune of being born into more prosperity? That's at last.
Right. So go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that ties back into my question earlier. When your life is spent trying to survive, you don't have time to think about thriving in other areas like school.
Right.
Right. I've got to your point, that 71% of my time is spent surviving. There's no free time to think about thriving in school. And so that's just what's going through my head as you're sitting here talking. Is it makes so much sense, because of course you can't be expected to thrive in school if I'm just surviving most of the time.
Yeah, you don't have the educational supports that other kids have that allow them to learn more proficiently.
That's right.
When well-resourced kids leave school, they go from one learning environment home to another learning environment that's conducive to them continuing to learn. My challenges with learning when I was a child didn't arise when I was in school. Right? Like my challenge to my safety was in school because we fought all the time.
Right.
But my challenge to my learning didn't arise when I was in school. My challenge to my learning arose when I went home to a loving mother who was unable to put good learning supports around us. And don't think of it in terms that are beyond maybe your perception. A quiet place to study is an educational resource. Well, there were a lot of us in a really small space. There was never a quiet place to study.
That's right.
Someone to help you figure out your homework is an educational resource. It's that kind of stuff. So yes, it makes a difference to resources you're surrounded with.
And even, structure is an educational resource when you come home.
Yeah.
And you think about these impoverished neighborhoods that parents are killing themselves working just to provide, and they're not getting home, Darren's instance, not getting home till 11 o'clock at night. And so to expect a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old to create structure
for themselves
to get questions answered.
Yeah, regardless of the home.
Yeah.
Like regardless of the home. It's just the circumstances that you're put in.
And then you throw in summer break. And that's 2.5 months of, now I don't have school that I go to. My parents they can count on that to support me for that hour or for those hours of the day. And so now the kids that have the support at home, that's just another opportunity for them to get ahead, is that summer break.
That's right. And we serve in the program elementary school age kids because, as I've shared before, I'm not in the business of molding relatively hardened clay.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the human potential in a person never expires.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that once you get beyond elementary school, you don't have the capacity to get better. I am saying that with the limited amount of resources, both time and monetary, I feel as if the best yield that we're going to get is with the more pliable mind of the elementary school age child.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we focus on kids in elementary school, and we give them what they need for them to develop into proficient learners. I need for them, like there's a set of fundamentals that come with every business, with every industry, with every discipline, obviously even in sports.
Right.
It's not enough to just work on a child's social and emotional health. It's necessary, Okay. So I am saying you must work on their social and emotional well-being, but it's not sufficient. It's not enough. Heck, I was a basketball player. I was a point guard, and I felt really good about me. Like I thought I was pretty good at it, but I never took the time to really develop my left hand the way that I needed to. So if you scouted me well, you knew where my kryptonite was.
He's going to the right.
He's going to the right every time. Force him left. And even as I felt good about myself as I was bringing the ball up, ultimately there was a fundamental that I didn't have that kept me from being successful at it.
Right.
Learning in academics is no different. If you don't know how to convert the teachings being presented to you from the front of the room, if you don't know how to convert that teacher's lesson into your own knowledge that you then carry with you as you move around the world, then you're going to be lacking in a fundamental. So you may feel good about yourself and have confidence, but you don't know that math operation. So you don't know how to do
So you're
that.
building the foundation.
Yes, fundamental skills.
So what's the age? 5, 6, elementary, kindergarten?
With this first cohort, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders.
Okay.
We end after the 6th grade. So you age out after the 6th grade, and you move into our alumni program. So you're in the 6th grade, you're an alum of us. And it's for a couple of practical reasons. Right? We're a co-ed program. And the kids are with us overnight. When COVID allows, they're with us overnight. And I can't have boys and girls together in the same place after the 6th grade. I will. Mother Nature is undefeated.
Exactly.
I'm not going to issue her first loss. And so I'm not interested in that L. So it just, for that reason. And then also, these are kids whose backgrounds are like mine. Once they get to 12 and they're beyond 6th grade, more than likely, a lot of them are going to be needed to contribute to the family income. And so for pragmatic reasons, we stop after the 6th grade with our sort of in program, and they move to the alumni network.
Okay, so walk us through really the logistics of this from selection to execution and what it looks like to these young students.
So the selection, this is like winning like a $50,000 a year scholarship for someone to teach you how to learn better. The only fair way to allocate that kind of opportunity in an impoverished neighborhood is to do it by lottery. And so that's what we do. We introduce the neighborhood that we serve to the program, make everyone aware of it. We invite folks to apply. And then if you meet the qualifications, then you're in the lottery, and then the lottery selects who comes in. When I say meet the qualifications, the primary qualification is that you have to be impoverished. We are here to serve impoverished people of whatever gender, of whatever race, of whatever religion, or whatever absence of religion. We are here to serve the poor. And so you wind up in the lottery. We have a preference for those who live closest to the house because that's the community that we serve. And that's sort of the admissions process. And beyond that, it's a matter of them getting accustomed to what we do in their lives to develop this person into a proficient learner. So they come to us, they are with us every day that precedes a school day. So every night that precedes a school day, you're with us so that you can be prepared to learn when you go into class the next day. So they are with us from Sunday afternoons at around 3 o'clock until they get out of school on Friday. And then Friday, when they get out of school, they go home for the balance of the weekend. They come back to us on Sunday. When they come to us at 3 o'clock on each of these days preceding a school day, the first 3.5 hours is fairly academic. This is a time when we're teaching them these fundamentals of how you learn. And we focus on the core classes. And so that happens during that time, and you have a counselor who's working with you. And the program that I created for At Last is housed on an iPad mini, and it gathers up data. The counselors are applying the program and entering data on radio buttons as they work with the students so that we can capture the inputs that are going into the student. I want to know that we applied the program to every student comprehensively every day the way that it was designed, so that if we don't get the outcomes we're looking for, we can do root cause analysis. So they're pressing the buttons. The outcomes are being stored in the data. And then Power BI is helping us to create dashboards that visualize the outcomes for each individual student. So that's the first 3.5 hours. It's fairly academic. They also get a really nice dinner during that time.
Right. Which is huge.
It's good stuff.
Hey guys, it's me again, but do not click forward or fast forward through this. I'm about to give you some real sleep tips here. This isn't your typical ad. And of course, these sleep tips are brought to you by our friends at Sleep Number, the official sleep and wellness partner of the Darren Woodson Show. Number 1 sleep tip: try going to bed and waking up around the same time every day. This includes weekends. I know the tendency is you wake up early all week, and then on the weekends you sleep in. But this throws off your circadian rhythm. Try to keep the same sleep routine no matter what day of the week. Even those crazy wild animals like me who wake up early in the morning, try to stay within 30 minutes of that wake-up time, even on the weekends. Step number 2, don't try to stay up late and catch up on work. Look, I get it. Every single person I know is the busiest they've ever been in their life. The tendency is to stay up late, try to catch up on work, but try to have a cutoff time so that you're not stressed heading into your bedtime. Step number 3, avoid lit or lighted technology and electronics at least an hour before bed. I'm sure you've heard this before. We don't need to get into it, but try to avoid those at least an hour before bed. Tip number 4, keep your bedroom free of work-related items and instead make it your sanctuary. So this kind of ties back into step number 2, but try not to bring your work into bed with you. Keep the bed work-free. And then last 2, step number 5, avoid alcohol. That's hit or miss for some people. For me, that's not a big deal, but I know for others love their alcohol. But alcohol does have an effect on your sleep. So make sure you limit your alcohol during the week if you can, especially in the evenings. And then number 6 and final, if you need to get up during the night to tend to someone else, a.k.a. a 4-year-old or a 1-year-old screaming baby, keep lights low and conversation to a minimum to help ease you back to sleep afterwards. I usually keep conversation at a minimum at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know about you. So that part's not too hard, but try to keep lights low. So there you go. Like I said, not your typical ad read. Hopefully you can apply one of those 6 or multiple of those 6 steps to help you get better sleep. And as always, thank you to Sleep Number. Thank you for their partnership. Go to sleepnumber.com to learn more about all their amazing products and go get yourself involved over there. We appreciate you guys. We love you. Now back to the episode.
It's good stuff.
That is huge. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the community and you hear the kids go to school, they don't eat, can't afford. I mean, and sometimes the only meal of the day they have is at school.
School, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, just having structure and then having a dinner.
Yeah.
Afterwards means so
That's
much.
Right.
Yeah.
They sit and they have dinner with us, and it's a chance to have dinner and communicate.
Yeah.
And sort of like this becomes your second family.
Right.
And so family attributes about how it is that we sit around at dinner and talk about how the day went, what your goals are, what you did well at today, what you didn't do well at.
Right.
Yeah, how'd that social conflict work out that you had yesterday with that guy? Like all that stuff. And have it to occur in a way that starts to help them to understand conflict resolution perhaps better than I did when I went to UT. Right, like all these things. And then at 7, we expose them to the exploration of extracurricular interests.
I was going to ask.
Nobody just wants to learn what you want them to learn.
Right.
They have their own. If you want to unlock someone's intellectual curiosity, let them bring it to bear on something that they care about. And so if you want to learn how to play an instrument, and then we will get you a lesson and an instructor in an instrument.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then you can pursue that. If you're interested in animation, and we have a guy who comes in now and sort of gives them exposure to animation. The bottom line is that whatever it is that you're interested in, we're going to do our dead level best to give you exposure to it. Why? Because if you were growing up in a household that had middle class or above resources, that's what that parent would do.
Absolutely.
With your intellectual curiosity. They would foster it. And so we do that with the kids. And that piece is important to us. So that's an hour and a half. And then after that, there are a couple of things that have to happen. Number one, you have to reach out to your mom. So we've got the devices. it's FaceTime your mom time, right? And then we make sure that the mom is able to receive it. And then, so that piece has to occur, because every day you've got to touch base with mom, because you need to know how her day went. She needs to know how yours went.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you have to enjoy reaching out to mom every day. But you don't have to like it.
Right. Yeah.
You just have to do it.
You just got to do it.
Right? You'll grow to like it, because you won't be a kid all your life.
Yeah.
You know? And some things you do in life, not because you enjoy it, but because of what it does for the other person. Right. And your mom hearing from you is restorative for her.
Yeah.
She matters too.
So let's talk about that. How, the relationship that moms, dads have with the school. I mean, it's got to be hard to have their babies go, not at home for a number of days. What are you seeing? How are you guys tapping into that and convincing the mom or father to allow their child to go and take this commitment?
Man, that's the high hurdle, right? In this process, that's the high hurdle, because the bottom line is that I'm not going to do a hard sell. Like, I'm not going to convince you to do this.
Yeah.
You have to choose it.
Right.
Like, this really is a resource that's only available to you if your mom decides that we're a good fit for your family. That's the only way. Because number one, I want the moms to be the heroes in this.
Right.
I want to always be able to tell a child, you are here getting access to these resources because your mother made this available to you.
Right.
Mom has to remain the hero.
Yeah.
So that's paramount. But on the front end of that, mom has to choose us, which is sort of your question. Right. And so we're a program that's really created. People hear about us and they think we're for bad parents.
Right.
And kids who have bad parents. We're here for kids who have good parents, who value education and believe in their child's ability to learn and understand the importance of that to that child's future.
Right.
And finally, and in many ways, most importantly, they are willing to make a sacrifice to have that happen for their child.
Yeah.
The sacrifice in this instance is your child is going to be around the corner from you for 5 nights a week, so that they can become more proficient at learning. Like, that's the sacrifice, and I don't minimize that. I mean, it's a sacrifice.
That's a huge sacrifice. And as you're telling this, I'm like, a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old. It's hard to comprehend. Like, why am I just doing this? Like, why are you sending me away? Like, that's got to be really hard.
That's love, though.
Mom.
That's
right.
There's so much love there.
Sacrifice.
It's a sacrifice. It's love, but it's like giving my child an opportunity. Just an opportunity, knowing my circumstances. Like, I can guarantee you this: I would have been one of those kids.
Yeah,
because my mother was always looking for ways to better her children.
Yes,
and understanding that, and that's a huge sacrifice to make, and that's pure love. One of the things, it's so At-Last is so disruptive. It is disruptive in the end. I mean, just in the inner city, I mean, you're not seeing this take place around the country, or you're not really hearing a lot about this. How disruptive has it been in the inner city with DISD? Have they come to you with open arms to help through the process as well?
We don't find a monolithic response. Like, it isn't all embrace and it isn't all stiff arm. Right? It's a mixed bag, and it depends upon often the school leader.
Yeah.
Some principals, when I tell them, we can help the students in your underperforming school perform better without us interfering at all with your school day.
Right.
Yeah.
When I tell them that, they give me that suspicious look because they've heard it all before.
Right.
And I get that. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. When I tell them how it is that we get there, it sort of perks up their interest because they realize that this is innovative and this is different and is not being done anywhere else. Now I have the benefit of also being able to tell them that last semester, which is our first semester actually having kids in program, that we took the kids who were averaging a failing grade in their core classes and increased their grades by 21%. 21% is a lot.
Right.
Big jump.
Yeah.
If any school could improve the grades of its kids with the greatest deficits by 21% in less than one semester,
Right.
they'd shut down and have a parade the next day.
Right.
So we've gotten from the principals who have embraced us, they absolutely love us because the outcomes have improved. And those were for the kids with the deepest deficits.
Right.
I also measured the ones that didn't have the deepest deficits, and all of their grades improved as well. Not by 21%, because you don't have as much room. Math limits you. I mean, it's a 100-point scale,
Right.
but they all improved. So some of the DISD schools have embraced us. One in particular has embraced us uniquely well. And we've got a great partnership with them. We work well with them, and their students have performed better. Other DISD schools, I think that they are not embracing us because of the fear of the unknown. They don't know that we're not actually a school.
Right.
And I can't tell them that enough for them to conceive it perceive it and believe it. Others, because they don't know that we're not a school, they fear that we may be trying to draw that kid over to us and away from them. And state funding is based on enrollment. And we have the same thing with the charters and to a lesser extent with the magnets. So that's part of it. The other part of it is they don't want to get in trouble and lose their job.
Yeah.
If they only do the things that the district tells them to do, they are not going to lose their job.
Yeah, man, that's
And so I get it. You know, I don't think it's a great way to move forward and improve an underperforming area, but I get it. And so my thing is this, and it's the same way with the parents. I'm not going to talk you into this, because to talk you into this means that I have to be your motivation every day to come back. And I'm not going to be that gravitational pull for you.
Right.
I'm capable of doing that, but I want to put that energy into the children we're trying to improve.
right. Right.
That's where that energy goes with our program.
Yeah. So when a child wins the lottery, are they in for the remainder of that period, or is there a new lottery every semester, every year?
Yeah.
How does that process go? Because if a parent has a third grader, are they saying, okay, 3 years?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. I'm not going to have a kid come in by lottery in the 4th grade, then have a new lottery and boot them out in the 5th grade.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. Once you have your spot, our rules are really simple. Number one, you have to follow the program rules. There are only a few of them.
Yeah.
One of which is you need to try your best.
Yeah.
I can't be your effort for you.
Right.
We don't mind being your resources. I can't be your effort.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge one. If the kid comes in and does his or her best every day, this program is not one that's designed to create a universe of doctors, lawyers, and engineers. Like, that's not the point. It's honestly not even the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is there's a certain amount of capability that I believe the Lord has poured into every individual.
Right.
Yeah.
The only goal we have in our program is that we want to remove the environmental impediments from you reaching the fullness of your human potential. Not everyone is going to go to college and thrive as a result of that. And there are a lot of folks out there who are going to do well in a very blue-collar environment. What if you go out and become a really good plumber and then you own your plumbing practice and you make a really good living doing that? Why should I predetermine what your road should be? I want you to be an adult who's been well-educated, who's a proficient learner, because now you can actually have a choice-filled life rather than being relegated to something that someone else has chosen for you.
Yeah.
So we don't boot them out because they aren't making A's.
Yeah.
We don't skim off the top 10% and only serve those. We will take whatever child you send walking through that door and help him or her refine the native intellect that they have and become a more proficient learner. And I'm going to celebrate the plumbers that we generate and the coders that we generate as much as I do the doctors and lawyers, because the neighborhoods that we serve don't produce a steady stream of blue collar workers.
Right.
These would be working class neighborhoods if they did, not impoverished neighborhoods.
Yeah. Right.
So I want to celebrate the full continuum of human potential that we find in these kids.
And how many neighborhoods did you say you're serving, and how many kids in total are being
So
served?
here's our thing. We focus only on impoverished neighborhoods. And so we are in 75216 now, which is the neighborhood that contributes. It's the zip code that contributes the most people to the Texas penitentiary system, 75216. And that's in the entire state of Texas. Wow. That neighborhood, that zip code contributes the most. The zip code that contributes second most is 75217, the one that I grew up in. Those are the neighborhoods that we exist to serve. And so we've built the first house on the acreage that we bought. And as a business guy, I believe that you start small, prove the premise, and then you scale on a proven model.
Absolutely. Right.
So the first house accommodates 16 scholars and residents.
Okay.
And the plans and designs and the acreage allows us to build 2 more houses on there as we finish proving the premise. House 2 will be 15,000 square feet, and it will accommodate another 82 scholars and residents. So at that point, we'll be at 98. And then house 3 will accommodate, it'll also be 15,000 square feet, 82 more scholars and residents. And at that point, we'll be serving 180 on that site. And at the same time, you mentioned the notion of us hearing from other cities and areas.
Yeah.
We'll replicate this model in other areas where we find good scaling partners and move forward from there.
I know you said small, and I get your point, but think about those 16, the ripple effect that those 16 have. And I'm not saying that's what you were, I'm just saying that's amazing.
I'm in agreement with you.
That you start small, but look at that impact. It's unreal.
If we could have 16 impoverished families attain social mobility by educating kids, that would be a great thing. Like I don't diminish that in the slightest. But honestly, if I'm only able to do this for 16, I won't be satisfied with that.
Sure.
Because I think the potential for what we can do is so much greater. And I don't know that I can have critical mass in the communities that I'm serving 16 kids.
Yeah.
I can as I scale and serve more. But the worst thing that you could do is to start off huge before you've tested the premise, worked out the processes, and gotten really, really confident
and efficient
in the approach.
You know, when the first time we met over lunch, the one thing I recognized about you and your wife, Jill, is that you guys are present. You're present in the moment.
Yes.
You know where you are right now, and you know the impact, and you know the possibilities of the impacts that you guys can make moving forward. I want you, if we have listeners out there, how do we serve you? How do we give back to At Last? What can we do to make a difference?
Well, so I'm happy to tell you that. But I'll tell you, one of the things that really helps me to move forward, because everybody's reservoir becomes more shallow at times, and then it replenishes. It's just having conversations with folks who have a common journey. And I got more motivation just out of our conversation over lunch that day. Because, as they say, game peep game.
Right.
I could tell from our conversation that you were filling in parts of the sentence that I hadn't finished yet.
Right.
Because our life experiences had provided us with the verbiage.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so the fact that you had a mom whose sacrifice was common with my own, and you had a journey that was similar to my own, just gave me more reason to believe that you never know which of the kids that we have At Last today is going to have the blessing of a life like mine or a life like yours.
Absolutely.
So I took motivation and energy from that. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Those who want to learn more about At Last or be supportive of At Last, our website is www.atlastlast.com. LASTBOARDING.com. That's atlastboarding.com. You'll be able to learn more about us there. If you are so moved, you'll be able to donate there. If you want to volunteer there, do that. And otherwise, be an ambassador for us. Tell people about us. We've been fortunate to have podcasts about us like this one today and news stories about us.
Right.
We'll post those on the website, but also, if we hadn't had a chance to post them yet, find them.
Right.
And just look at them. There are news stories out there that'll tell you about us in 2.5 minutes. Share those with your friends. Share those with the policymakers in your area. Share those with the businesses at which you work and the organizations in which you volunteer. That would be helpful. We never have enough ambassadors and advocates. The bottom line is this. The neighborhoods that we serve are not the impoverished person's portion of the human zoo. Don't just stand back and observe.
Right.
We've got to work on this
Actively
with things that have effect. I'm going to do all I can to make sure that At Last remains one that has effect. So we welcome anyone who wants to be with us.
So from a funding standpoint, is it strictly donation? Is it partners? Is it grants? What has been the strategy to because obviously you have to staff it, you have to keep the real estate up and coming. There's a lot of costs. Transportation, food. There's a lot that goes into it. So how has that been, and how's the reception from the community been?
So I'll start with, you're right. Right? There's like a lot of costs associated with this. And in the nonprofit space, you don't get a lot of support until you prove your premise.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we've been fortunate in that we have gotten support from what I call the conventional philanthropic community, primarily because the Bowman Family Fund went first.
Yeah.
We are still the largest individual donor to this operation. And I say that with full appreciation for the fact that, again, conventional grant makers in Dallas have made good grants to us.
Great.
Grant makers in town that are blue chip.
Great.
Communities Foundation of Texas, the Cruth Fund, Hoblet-Zell Fund, the Hillcrest Foundation. The Simmons Sister Fund. They've all made contributions to us, and I'm grateful for that. But we had to go first.
Yeah.
Because no one was going to buy that land for us to do this. No one was going to pay all the pre-development costs. That needed to be us. And so that's one of the ways. But we also make money. I'm a business guy, so I'm going to do alternative revenue efforts that are low risk. And we do things that may not seem down the middle of the fairway. One of the things we do every year with the radio station here in town is we do a domino tournament.
Nice.
It's called Donnie's DFW Domino Classic. And nobody thinks that a domino tournament is going to make very much in the way of money. I have to tell you.
I don't know.
They show up, don't they?
Our domino tournament. Our domino tournament is a 6-figure domino tournament.
That's amazing.
That's amazing, man.
It's ridiculous. And so I think Donovan Lewis, who's the on-air personality, who is the Donnie in Donovan's DFW Domino Classic, he grew up in the neighborhood where At Last is located.
Yeah.
And so he and I just sort of clicked around that. And I asked him one day, we were talking about At Last. He's like, man, I want to do something to help this. I was like, well, what do you like to do? He says, I like dominoes. They're like, all right, brother, give me 2 weeks.
Right.
And I'll come back to you with
bones,
something. And I brought that back to him, the domino. And it's been great. So we apply for money and grants. But the business guy in me can't just sit back and wait for someone else to decide whether or not we get money.
Right.
So we go out and
write
make
up
our
an
own.
application, wait. Yeah. Totally get it.
I respect the process, but we can also make money on our own. And so we do both.
That's awesome. Are there any strategic partners out there that y'all are looking for to partner with that could help, with either operations, whether it's transportation, is there anything out there that you're in need of? Because if there's someone out there that's moved by this conversation, the impact that you're making in the community, it's like, all right, hey, I know this group, or I know that. Are there any of those?
Yes, we have. If you think that you can be helpful to us, reach out to us.
Okay.
The bottom line is that we're running a residential operation. So think of all the things that go with that. Food goes with that. Detergent goes with that. Transportation, obviously, goes with that.
Yeah.
Like there's landscaping goes with that. Like repair and maintenance goes with that. The kids that we serve could often use more clothing, so clothing goes with that. There is no area of need that we don't have.
Yeah.
Right.
The partners that we're looking for, Dallas is a community that's blessed with corporate citizens who want to be great corporate citizens.
Yeah.
We would welcome the opportunity to partner with them, whether it's Fortune 500 companies, individual entrepreneurs, private equity companies, sports organizations, whatever you are.
Yeah.
You know, everyone has an appetite to serve.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's your opportunity.
Yeah. I love it.
Love it, man.
I love it.
You got your last?
Yeah. Our last question that we ask every guest, and this goes a little bit back more towards your journey, but you could apply it to what you're doing at Last as well. If you could go back to any point in your life and tell yourself one thing, doesn't necessarily mean you change anything, but if you just go tell yourself one thing, where do you go and what do you tell yourself?
I probably go to 14-year-old me who has discovered that he has a bleeding ulcer. Not by going to the doctor, because we didn't have health insurance, but because he passed out in front of his home and was discovered there bleeding and wound up at Parkland in the emergency room. I would go to that guy and I would say, it's going to work out. I think if he knew that, he might not have contracted the bleeding ulcer that rode with him throughout high school, college, and law school until he could get insurance and until he could get medicine. I'd like to go and tell that guy that, so maybe he doesn't have to ride out that ulcer. The lack of health insurance is life-altering.
It's amazing.
You may have wanted something more cheery than that. I don't know.
I
I feel like I didn't quite.
No, that's why we asked that question, because everybody's answer is so different, and you just don't know what speaks to people. And so thank you for sharing that.
You know what? It's interesting though, is that it was so different than any answer we've ever gotten, but it's so much how we hear it like it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Imagine these kids, and it's typically that 12 to 15 range. People would go back to that range. Imagine if we had more mentors, more parents, more people of influence over these 12 to 15-year-olds, they could step in and share that with them.
Right.
That it's going to be okay. That you're going to make it. This is just a valley right now.
Yeah. Yeah. In this conversation, you mentioned the word shockwave, the shockwave, just off of just changing one kid's life, the shockwave that happens in the community for the parents, the family.
Yeah.
We need more.
We do.
We need more, man. And Randy, I promise you, right here, I'm going to make a difference. It's something that I've always felt. It's something that I talk about on this show all the time. It's about education. And it's not fair. I can't stand when I hear people say, well, we're on the same playing field. No, we're not.
No,
we're not. I was that kid. I didn't have the opportunity.
that's right.
And I know my mother would have put me in to At Last just because of the love.
Yes.
And the want to. So I'm going to make a commitment, man, to help and bring awareness to At Last, man. And I appreciate your time today.
I appreciate that commitment. I look forward to working with you on that, because I know it comes from your heart, fed by your experience.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Wow, we really appreciate you sharing your journey, sharing your story, because it gave so much context about At Last and what y'all are doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you all, man. I really appreciate you having me.
Thanks, bro. Thanks, guys.